So, as you're thinking about doing this and you think you want to begin to learn how to tell these stories, one of the things to really remember is that getting ready to tell these stories is, in a sense, sort of like you were the pastor getting ready to preach a sermon. So there needs to be a kind of internal preparation and work that you do with the text and with praying it and just allowing that text to kind of become a part of you and to internalize it. So I would suggest, if you're thinking, okay, we're going to do this, and I think the Good Shepherd is a really good starting story. But to sit with the 23rd Psalm and with John 10, where Jesus talks about being the Good Shepherd and finding the shepherd that's been lost. And really, if you've ever done any Lectio Divina, to just incorporate that into your prayer life and just allow it to become part of you. And then as you're getting ready to tell the story, read through the script, kind of get that in your brain. It might take more than once, probably. It takes me more than once. And then, begin to gather the materials and get them together on this tray. Reread the script. And then, particularly as you're learning the story, begin to lay it out. And just begin putting the figures down on the felt. Begin moving them around. You may be just sort of saying some of the words, not feeling like you have to have the precise script, but kind of going through the story. And then, when I was learning these stories, I would move the figures, I would read the script, move the figures, read the script. It was a process of going back and forth between the two and really kind of getting the rhythm of where there is a method, figuring out where you want to end up. And sometimes knowing where you want to end up, it helps you know where you need to place the figures in the interim moves so that you're doing it most efficiently, least not knocking figures over, which, I sometimes still do. But just get comfortable kind of visualizing the story, where the figures need to go, and then just begin to say the words, say the words, move the figures, and just begin to work with it until you feel really, really comfortable with it. It is a process, and it's not something that, we can necessarily expect over in just a little bit. And in moving the figures, you notice that most of the time I present the figure and try to let everybody get a look at it and then put it down. So you want to hold it in front of you with both hands and basically at eye level of the people that you're telling the story to. And then we've talked about this already. You don't want to look at the people, you want to look at the figures. And you want to bring both yourself and the participants into the story. And practice. Practice moving the figures. I got up this morning and thought, I don't need to practice moving the figures. I've told these stories before, and I thought, no, I need to go through and practice again because, it's been a while since I've told a couple of these, and I really needed to review how it worked. And the other thing that Sonia was really big on was handle the figures with respect. Don't hold them by their heads. Nobody wants to be grabbed by their head. So when you're holding them or moving them, you know, you hold them by their waists or hold them at their feet. And you try to make the figures glide. You don't want to bounce. So it's as smooth as you can make it. And sometimes, you know, depending on what surface you're on, and I mean, I've discovered some surfaces make it hard, the figures don't want to stand up, and so, and even if you have a roadway sitting on another piece of felt, if you try to set a figure on where it's both levels, it makes them less steady. So it's just, but you know, we work towards smoothness. That doesn't mean we always achieve it. And then when you're actually in the service and you're ready to tell the story, you know, our tendency is we don't like to have any dead space. And so, you know, you finish singing the song and it's like, oh, it's time to tell the story. Give yourself some space. Give yourself some room to center yourself and to wait for that story to kind of be ready to emerge. Now, you probably don't want to stand there for 5 minutes, but taking a little bit of space to just be centered and to not feel like you're just rushing into it is good for you and it's good for your group. And, you know, we say this at the beginning of the worship service, we are in a sacred space and we have all the time that we need. One of the main reasons we say that is not so much for the people that we're talking to, but it's for us. We are in a sacred space. We have all the time we need, so we don't need to rush ourselves or rush the participants through it. Now, when Sonia was telling the stories to pastors, that was the phrase that just hit my heart. We are in a sacred space and we have all the time we need. And there was so much of my life where I felt like I did not have all the time I needed, you know. And I would just walk around saying to myself, because I figured I was in a sacred space wherever I was, right? And I had all the time I needed. And, you know, it's just one of those practices that's helpful and just helps slow us down. And so it's good to just remember that as we're starting. And the worship, there is an order. You know, there is, we approach God. And one of the things that, you know, I do when I'm in a setting like this where there may be, you know, 6, 7, 8, maybe up to 10 people coming in. And usually they have somebody bringing them in from their rooms. And I try to be there, and I do use name tags. It can be a little distracting for some folk, but you know, I have had pretty good luck actually, just saying, you know, my name is Nancy, I'm here to do worship. I don't know your name. Can you tell me your name? And I write their name and put it on them, and it's so that I can, you know, call you by name while we're here. And people have been, you know, I don't always get the right name, but but people have been really willing to do that. And, you know, and there is a sort of a call to worship in just that we are here today to worship God together, to be with God, to talk with God, to listen to God, and to hear the stories of God. And then you can also say, and we have all the time we need to do this. And then we start with that, the Lord be with you, and also with you. You know, that's a liturgical form that many, many people know. People who grew up in totally non-liturgical settings don't know it, but they learn it. And then we sing a hymn, and then, you know, today we did Be Still and Know with the Good Shepherd story. For Zacchaeus, we did Come By Here, because that just sort of seemed to fit with that story. And it's easy to sing, people know. And then for the Christmas story, we used O Come, you know, we used the O Come Let Us Adore Him as kind of a way into that more reflective piece. And then we tell the story. And then in the responding to God's word section, and this is the part I would love to have feedback from you guys as you work with this with folk. Sonia used with the children wondering questions. I wonder how the sheep felt. I wonder this, and then would say, and I wonder what you're wondering about this story. I haven't been really successful in getting a lot of response from folk with that. I would like to find some ways that, now not some of the folk are not terribly verbal, so that's part of the issue. But sometimes I think they don't know what to do. Wondering is a little vague. So this is a piece I'm not totally happy with. You know, as far as I'm concerned, it's sort of still under construction. And I haven't done it enough to know whether this would be better, but to maybe be, rather than just sort of, I'm wondering how the lost sheep felt when it was by itself in the canyon. If it would help to maybe name a feeling or two. I wonder if the sheep was feeling scared or afraid, and then maybe asking, what do you think? Or what do you think that sheep was feeling? You know, to give it a little more, to start by naming it a little bit more. And then usually after we wonder together and, you know, kind of just sort of, and a lot of times I think that's on a more feeling level, what the feelings are evoked by the situations in the story. And then we read a portion from the Bible. You know, we did it different ways. The Psalm 23, we did a unison reading. In the other stories, usually the leader just reads a short passage from, you know, this is in the Bible. And then we do have a prayer of thanks. And what I generally try to do, and I'm not always successful in this, but usually one or two people are verbal enough that they can tell you something that they would like to thank God for. Often it was for their family, or, you know, I would often say, it's a beautiful day today. You know, can we thank God for the weather, the trees, the flowers, whatever. And so then I would try to gather the things that they had expressed and put those in a prayer of thanks, and then inviting them at the end to join me in the Lord's Prayer. And then after that, there's another hymn. And then there's a benediction blessing. And I would encourage those of you who even don't feel like you're pastors to be brave and do a benediction, do a blessing. We can bless one another. It's powerful. When I was working in the retirement community, I felt like when I was preaching and doing the services, that the most powerful part of the service was the benediction. And I did use the Lord bless you and keep you, because that was one that many were really familiar with. And I could just, when I said those words, many people would be mouthing them along with me. I mean, they know those words, and they're very comforting and grounding and rooted. And I just think that's a gift that we can give. And I think we often don't realize the power that we are given by the Spirit to bless one another. Just some couple of really nitpicky or just small things. You know, we've talked about the song sheets, and I just, you know, just make it a part of what you do. You pass them out, you pick them up, go the same direction all the time. Lamination would be great. I would really think that this kind of worship, this was not this was sort of meant to be a supplement to any other kind of worship, large group worship that's happening at the place or wherever you may be. I really think it needs to be 6 to 8 would be ideal. If it gets larger than 10 or 12, it's really too big. It really does, if you're taking it into a nursing home setting, to have a staff person present. And if you're going into that kind of setting, what I discovered when I was working in that kind of setting and people would come in to do what I thought was a small group thing, the staff would just bring everybody. So you really have to negotiate with the activities person or whoever you're working with to make it very clear what the focus needs to be. And maybe if they have more than like if they have a size of 2 groups, maybe even offer to do it twice, but to keep the numbers small. And then, we were talking about hand gestures. If you're from a liturgical tradition, and most of those people there are from a liturgical tradition, making the sign of the cross as you do the benediction would be really, really appropriate. That doesn't happen to be my tradition, and I tend to forget that. But I think, yes. I think the more that, and if people are used to using after Scripture the word of the Lord, thanks be to God, build that in. It's sort of like the Lord be with you and also with you. I mean, you can build that in. But I think you kind of have to know your group and what their backgrounds are. But if they have those kind of traditions, build on them. Because those are often responses that are just, they're there. And helps them, I think, feel like they're there, And then, just a final note from me. Sonia was quite insistent that these stories be done the way she had written them. And that people didn't just sort of take them and adapt them, I'm not going to be that hard-lined, but I would, partly because I would like us all to learn together, those of us who are maybe journeying out to do this thing. And I would really appreciate if you would kind of use it as designed. And if you're finding things that just don't work, call me up and let's talk. And maybe we can figure out what needs to be adapted. But I'd kind of like to do it systemically so that we have a community of people who are using this and that we can learn from each other. I'm working with some people on getting kind of an education piece to my website. And what I would like to do is create kind of a learning circle for people who are using this material so that we could post things, post ideas, post suggestions, and we could have a conversation about what we're learning. Because I do want it to be collaborative. I want us to learn from each other's experience. I've done this some, but I'm not everywhere and in every setting. So I would really love feedback as to how you're using it and what you're finding that's working, what you're finding that's problematic, and so that we can work on that together. And I just really want you all to have wonderful blessings as you do this.